Hey, my name is Rusty Korhonen. I've got another story for you. In 2016, my dad and I decided to go to Finland. Nice little backstory about that. We had a cousin, my cousin Essa, came to visit us from Finland with his wife and his daughter. And he was here for a few weeks, and we had a really great time getting to know each other and just having some fun and learning about the family history and the family tree and the lore and everything. My aunt had decided to have a family reunion, so all of the cousins and everybody could come and meet and get to know everybody. So it was fantastic. It was a long time since we've done that. And I remember over dinner my father saying, I'd like to get back to Finland before I die. It's been, 30 years or so. I'd like to go back. And I said, Dad, let's go next summer. I don't know how I can pull it off. My dad said, well, I've got frequent flyer miles, but not enough for 2 tickets. And I was kind of strapped at the time and said, I don't know how, but let's do it. And my sister kind of laughed because we'd been trying to get my dad to travel a little bit more and, just get out, and he wouldn't do it. And he says, you know what? I'm not so sure. I said, Dad, we're only going to do this once. We got to do it soon. And he said, oh, okay. All right. You find a way to get there and we'll get there. So I went home, and it was really kind of heavy on my heart. I honestly couldn't afford it. I was paying for making some monthly payments so my son could go to World Youth Day in Poland. And he was part of a youth group at church. And I was really excited about that for him. And as I started thinking about this, I really wanted to go to Finland. But it was really on my heart that I needed to find a way to get my wife to go to Poland with my son. She was part of the youth group. She was in the leadership, and she had a lot to do with helping these kids get formed. And it really hit me that, she needs to go to Poland before I go to Finland. So I said some prayers, I thought about it, and I really felt it on my heart, the Lord telling me, hey, you get your wife to Poland, I'll take care of Finland. And I said, all right. Okay, deal. So I called the group in charge, and I got the price. It was about what I figured. So I had to tighten the belt a little bit more. And so I did. I made the down payment, and literally that weekend I was heading to Europe for work. I still hadn't accrued enough, and I wouldn't accrue enough frequent flyer miles to get a trip to Europe. So I'm sitting in the airport, and the lady at the gate said, we have a family of 5 that didn't make their last flight. This flight is full. I need 5 people to step up and give up their seats. So we're willing to give $100. And I said, no way, just can't do it. I got to be at this meeting. So this went on for about a half an hour. It went from 200 to 500, and I don't remember exactly why, but she said $1,200. My ears perked up, because that was about the price that I had to come up with for my wife's trip to Poland. And I said, wait a minute, it hadn't occurred to me that I could maybe leverage this. So I took out my phone, I did some quick searches on a flight to Finland, and $1,200 would do it. And so I ran up there. I said, hey, that $1,200, would that do multiple legs, or is it only one flight? She said, no, that's multiple legs. You can do it. I said, deal, I'll take it. So I said, but I need to get to my business meeting. I had about 6 hours to play with, and she rerouted me, and everything worked out. It really did. It was fantastic. I sat down, I called my dad, and I said, Dad, we're going to Finland. And it really amazes me when you think about it. You make a plan, you commit to it, and things kind of fall in place. I also prayed about it, and I really think I did the right thing to get my wife to Poland, and that prayer was honored, and I really appreciate that. So I called my dad. After I came home, so what are we going to do? Well, this is our trip. Where are we going? He said, well, we have to go to Helsinki. We got to visit family. And I said, okay, when do you want to do this? And he said, you know, I have always wanted to go during Juhannus and celebrate Juhannus, which is a Finnish holiday that celebrates the summer solstice. I said, well, okay, the summer solstice, all right, that's like the latter part of June. He says, yeah, they usually have bonfires, and it's kind of like our Memorial Day weekend here, and it's a big celebration in Finland. I said, okay, great. I said, do we just go to Helsinki? What else do you want to do? And he said, you know what? He said, I've never seen the Lapland, and I'd love to go to the Lapland. And I couldn't have cheered even louder, because I've always wanted to go to the Lapland. My grandfather's from the eastern part of Finland. I've been there, been to Helsinki. I've always wanted to see the land of the midnight sun. So I said, let's go. I'll figure everything out. So we booked the trip. We flew into Helsinki, and the first after we landed, I had two agendas. I wanted to get a SIM card for my phone, because I had heard that was a lot cheaper, and oh boy was it. I don't know how it is now, but back in 2016 it was a lifesaver. I got a Saunalahti SIM card, and the amazing thing about that, I had solid coverage the entire trip, including the very northern part of the Lapland. And I'll mention some things about that in a minute, because we went all the way up to Utsjoki, which is the farthest northern city in Finland, and I was never without cell phone coverage. It was absolutely phenomenal. So my dad wanted to take a nap, so I ran out and got a SIM card, and I got a couple of local beers, and because I needed to relax too. But I called my cousin on my new phone, my new SIM card, and he happened to be between jobs. So he happened to have the whole week available. So he said, let's get together tomorrow, and I'll take you around Helsinki and show you the sights. It was amazing. I couldn't have planned it any better. Well, we had been sending emails back and forth saying when we were coming into town, but it just so happened that his project ended, and he was going to be starting a job in a few weeks, but he was our tour guide. So first day, I wanted to see the church where my grandparents are married, and then go to the market, and then we'd figure out what to do next. So we went to the old church, Helsinki Old Church, and it's on a hill, and there's these steps that lead up to it. And my dad, we got a picture in front of the church, and then my dad said, hey, I'm not going to make it up those steps. And even if you guys drag me up there, there's no way I'm coming down. So I'm going to sit over here, I'm going to order a beer, and I'm going to wait for you guys. Take your time. We said, all right. So we went up there, and I opened the door. I think we interrupted a wedding. We were very quiet after that. But got some great pictures. Came down and sat down next to my dad, and we were about ready to order beer, and my dad just started looking really melancholy. And I said, well, Dad, what's going on? What's wrong? He says, you know what? I'm gonna head back to the hotel and maybe take a nap. You guys go around, you do what you want to do. I don't want to hold you guys back, and I just don't think my knees are gonna hold out walking all over the place. And I said, Dad, this is our vacation. I'm here to spend time with you in Finland. I have no agenda. I have nothing that I want to see that you can't see. I don't care how fast or how slow we go. He said, okay, what do you want to do right now? I said, I want to order a beer and figure out what we're going to do next, but you're not going back to the hotel. And he relaxed, and he smiled, and he said, this is going to be a great vacation, isn't it? And I said, oh, it's going to be legend. And it certainly was. We went to the Helsinki market, And my dad saw that there was a boat that had a harbor cruise. So we jumped on that and we wound up going to Suomenlinna. I hadn't done a lot of research in terms of what to see. I just figured we'd figure it out as we went. And oh my gosh, Suomenlinna was really amazing. It's an island just outside of the city of Helsinki in Helsinki Harbor, and it is spectacular. I'm a crazed history nut. This island is amazing. It was a fortress, and it obviously had seen quite a bit of action through the years, and just the history there was incredible. It really was. My grandfather was a Finnish naval officer. The Navy has a lot to do with keeping the island up, and it was just fabulous. I mean, we had lunch over there. They have a local brewery there, local brew pub, and the food was great. The company was awesome, and it was at my dad's pace. We didn't have to walk very far. It was nice and slow. And then we got back on the boat and it took us around the harbor. So we got to see some icebreakers, some sailing ships. And we pulled in, and then Essa said, you guys need to come over for dinner. So we went to my cousin's house for dinner and got to see his whole family and his two sons as well, who we had not met, and just had an absolutely fabulous dinner. Great catching up. They were happy to speak English. I was trying my bit at Finnish. I don't speak very much, and I can understand a little, but it was just wonderful to reconnect with family. Well, the next day, Essa met us at the hotel, and he got us, decided that he would drive us around. He had a plan and said, is there anything in particular you want to see? And I said, yes. If we're driving around, I have to see Paavo Nurmi, the statue of Paavo Nurmi and the Paavo Nurmi Stadium. I still consider myself a distance runner, even though I'm old and out of shape. He was my first hero, and I said I didn't get to see that when I was here before, and I really want to see that. And he says, okay, that's actually very close to where I want to take you guys. So he took us all over the place. I got to see Paavo Nurmi. I got a picture by the statue. There's so many highlights in this trip that was a highlight, but there's so many. Everything's a highlight, right? Well, then we went to, he lives in, as my cousin at the time lived in Espoo, and we went to his church, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Why are we going to your church? He said, this, you have to see this. It's a medieval church. It's a cathedral, and you have to see this. It's absolutely beautiful. This is where he went to church. So we went inside, and I mean, the artwork is fantastic. If you get a chance and you're ever in Helsinki and you have an extra day, it's definitely worth the trip to Espoo to see this cathedral. It was built a long time ago. I don't know all the history of it, but the townspeople helped build it. And in the concrete, if they had concrete that long ago, you can see handprints and everything. And what really tickled me was there was this little footprint, a child's footprint, still embedded in that concrete. I'm sure, you know, obviously long gone because this church is very old. It just really got me thinking why we were there in Helsinki to begin with, and why this is such an important trip, and why it's made such an impact on me. That little footprint brought it all home, that, hey, we are all community, getting in touch with our relatives, getting in touch with our past. That's what we do. That's why we love all the parts of our ancestry and our heritage. And I tell you, I'm so glad we went. That one little footprint really brought this whole trip into perspective for me. So after we left the church, we had lunch at this really beautiful nature area. And one of the things I appreciate about Helsinki, at least the outskirts, is that they don't build the buildings so close together like we do here in the United States. They're farther apart, so you get a lot more wildlife that's able to move in and out. I like the architecture and There's a lot of rock outcropping, so maybe that prohibits some of it, but it just doesn't seem as tight as some of our suburb areas here. I also like the fact that they don't have all these international chains everywhere. I mean, there's not a Starbucks on every corner, or at least here, Tim Hortons and stuff. I like those places, but it's really nice to see kind of a free flow of the land. But after that, my cousin said he wanted to take us to see his father, and my dad got all excited about that. And my dad and my cousin's father, his name is Pekka, is my grandmother's first cousin, but he was the youngest of the family, just a little bit older than my father. So he and my father grew up together. They used to fish all the time, and they until my dad left Finland, they were pretty close. So my dad hadn't seen him in, gosh, over 30 years. So he was really excited about that. And my cousin said, I have a surprise for you. Where my father now lives is really close to Tipanala. And my dad said, what? And he said, it's really close. We're going to go through Tipanala, which is where my father grew up. And he said, your childhood home is still there. And my dad just lit up like a Christmas tree. Really? That's, oh my gosh. So we drove by there. It's still there. It's a different color. So we drove around, and my dad was telling stories. It was really neat to see how excited my dad was. And as we drove past, he said, hey, can you drive by the airport? I just want to see the airport. And sure. So we drove by the airport, and my dad said, stop the car, stop the car. We stopped the car, and there was this DC-3, all shiny like they are, on the tarmac. And my dad said, I cannot believe it. I know, what? It's an airplane, Dad. He goes, no, I think that's the same DC-3 that we left Finland. I swear that's the same plane that took us to Sweden. And he's looking at it, and he says, well, obviously they've kind of refurbished some things, but oh my gosh. And so I fantastic. He didn't tell any stories about that, but it was really exciting. And I kind of filed that away, that okay, there's a little bit more here than I understood and that I had heard before. So anyway, then we went to Essa's father's place, and my dad got to have dinner with Pekka, and Pekka didn't speak any English, and I don't speak any Finnish, that at least fluently. So they were conversing back and forth in Finnish, and it was very heartwarming to see my father. I've obviously known my father my whole life, but this is one of the few times I really saw him so excited and so happy in a very different way. I mean, he's connecting with his heritage, and it was nice. It was really nice. We had a fantastic dinner. We got some great pictures, and then we headed back to the hotel, and then we had a side trip that my cousin and I helped put together. My father and his two sisters decided that they were going to donate a photo album that my grandfather put together during his time on the Suomen Joutsen. The Suomen Joutsen is a big square rig ship. It's actually berthed in Turku. And my grandfather spent the first 3 years of his life as a Sea Scout on the Suomen Joutsen. It was the first 3 years that the Suomen Joutsen was underway. It's a big ship that was purchased, that Finland purchased from France. And the intention was they were going to use it as a sea school to train the future naval officers. And my grandfather was accepted into the program. And I remember a story my dad was telling, that my grandfather was out rabbit hunting with his brother. And my grandfather is a Savolainen, so this is in Savo. And the letter came to the house, and Grandpa's mom sent another one of the kids out to go find him, to tell him that this letter was here. And so he showed up, and okay, so he packed up his stuff and headed to Turku, which was quite a trip. He got to Turku, and he said, I'm here, here's the letter. And everybody looked around saying, you're here for what? And he said, I'm here for the Sea Scouts. And they all said, oh, nobody's here yet, meaning nobody's here yet. None of the naval officers or anybody who organized all this We're still waiting for responses, but okay. He said they didn't have uniforms. They didn't have a place for me to stay. They said, well, here, you know, there's some cots over there, just pull one up. You can sleep here and until we get everything squared away. And when somebody showed up later that day and they said, oh, good, we got our first guy. Here, go out and start scraping rust off of that big mast over there. So my grandfather was one of the first to start refurbishing the ship. They had to put it all together, and he was immensely proud of that ship. And my cousin and I were trying to find the person in Turku who's part of the Finnish Naval Museum to make sure that we could, number one, they would accept our donation, and number two, would they be there, because this was so close to the Johannes celebration. I think this was a Thursday, and we got a hold of the guy. My cousin was talking to him in Finnish, and we set everything up. So that next day was really our mission. My dad and I were supposed to pack everything up. I rented a car, and we were heading to Turku specifically to drop off this photo album. But oh my gosh, the stuff that came out of that was absolutely amazing. But that's another story, my friends.